Hello everybody and welcome to today's video, where today is a very special day. It is one day before my birthday, and I'm sure you saw the title, I'm sure you saw the thumbnail, and if you follow me on my social medias, I'm sure you know what came out today. Now, I know my curls have fallen out, I know the lighting's not good, I know my makeup is fading, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because today I have some very exciting news. So, like I said before, today, May 6th, is one day before my birthday, so I'm still 19, and tomorrow, I turn 20, and I kiss my teen years goodbye, and I go into my 20s. That really doesn't have anything to do with this video, but one of the things that I really wanted to do was release 5 books before I was even 20, and I also had this idea in my head for literally years to do kind of like a 2-perspective story where like it's 2 books that come out at the same time. They're like, you're supposed to read them together, and one side, like there's one perspective and then there's another perspective, and I've literally had this idea in my head for so long, the characters too, and it's kind of like cops versus like criminals, or like law enforcement versus the criminal side, and I'm just like, I started this maybe like 6 months ago ish, roughly. I honestly did not think I would, 1, like be able to finish, and 2, actually be able to release and like stick to my deadlines. So I feel like I'm rambling and you guys are here to see the books. So without further ado, I introduce to you Two Sides. Okay, so oh my gosh, I've never shown this on camera before, so I'm very excited but also nervous because it's getting real, and I didn't tell anybody I was doing this. So here we go. So I want to go through both of these and talk about them separately and how they connect together and like the meanings behind them and what they're both about and how like obviously they connect. But so this one is Two Sides, Spiteful and Determined, and so this is the perspective of bounty hunters, and they're like a family of bounty hunters. And also, if you are familiar with Deeper Than Blood, this story, this series, these 2 books, they take place in Los Campos, and I feel like that's pretty cool. It's a different time period, because Deeper Than Blood I feel like was more like modern day, like with like social media and like not like yeah. And these books are supposed to be taking place in like the early 2010s, so it is the same city but different like time periods, but almost the same universe. So I don't know why when I read books I freaking eat it up every single time, so I wanted to emulate that. So yes, here is this one, and then this one is Two Sides, the Carry-On Circle. And so the Carry-On Circle is this big group and this big huge ring of criminals who kind of like, they're the backbone of the dark sides of Los Campos. And surprisingly, like, not a lot of people, like, if you're not in the streets and if you don't do drugs, like, you probably won't know who the Carry-On Circle is. But if you're in the streets and if you rely on drugs, then you probably know the Carry-On Circle, and you probably want to have some ties to them. And so sorry, I'm so excited. And yeah, so I think I'm going to start with Two Sides, Spiteful and Determined, and kind of just like read the description to you and take you through it. So Two Sides, Spiteful and Determined, like I said, is based on the bounty hunter's perspective, and the bounty family is supposed to be like the best bounty hunters in Los Campos. They're like locally known, locally famous, and realistically, like, you can run you can run all you want, but at the end of the day, they're gonna find you. Like, the bounty family is the best in the business. So I'm going to read to you the description before I go any further. Every story has 2 sides. This side is told from the POV of the bounties. Scott and Beth are some of the best bounty hunters in the game. Let's just say if you were wanted, then there's no chance you would survive running. The Bounty family was devoted to getting fugitives off the streets in Los Campos after they lost a family member due to these people. The Bounty family didn't just stop at Scott and Beth, though. Their oldest son, Dewey, their middle son, Justin, and their baby girl, Grace, also joined them in the force. That was until they met their match, the Carry On Circle. The chase was on when trying to catch Antonio Mendoza, but finding out this would be bigger than they expected. After taking down the table legs, the table was destined to fall. Not when the table's name was Antonio Mendoza. This case was different. It wasn't just one and done. It was years of history built up between the two families. Needless to say, justice will be served, even if it was the last thing Scott ever did. So I don't want to spoil it, and I'm sure you can kind of like pick apart like what this story in the description is going to be about. And there's one thing I did want to add, though. Let's see, I just saw it, but I'll show it to you on the copyright page. So when I was writing this, I would like finish one scene and then I would like think of how this would carry on into the next story in a sense. So I added these little stars right here. I don't know if you can see that. I added the little stars in just like random parts in the book. So in some, like in one book, the storyline may like pause or stop, and then you'll see the star, and that means that either you're supposed to like switch scenes and switch books completely, or that storyline, if it kind of just pauses in the middle, it carries on in the next book. And hopefully that works. I mean, when I was like writing this, I really did not think that idea was gonna work at all, and then when I was reading it back, I'm like, you know what, it kind of did work. So I don't know, it was just something new. And I mean, these are a lot of firsts for me. Like, I have never like written two books at the same time and released them together. I've never written a two-sided perspective story, and when you add both these books together and like the pages, because each book is 15 chapters, that is equivalent to a novel. And the fact that I wrote a whole novel, not just a novel, but like 2 separate stories in the matter of like 6 months, is crazy to me, because it took me like, Ice of Hell is the biggest book like I've ever written so far. I think it's 40 chapters. That took me like, I want to say like over a year. So the fact that I was able to do that like again, but like obviously not as long, and this, like, they're pretty like little, but when you put them together and considering like adding up the pages and like 15 chapters each, it is equivalent to a novel. Also, the Two Sides books, they are a little bit bigger than Haunting Spot. I want to say Haunting Spot was maybe like 90 pages. These are 140. And I told myself, if I was able to like each book, if I was able to kind of create another like Haunting Spot length to where they were like almost 100 pages, like I was shooting for 100 pages, right, for each book. And the fact that I went over, it's, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about these. I feel like they fit perfectly into my collection. I feel like they fit perfectly into my writing, but at the same time, like, I feel like I've been working on this project for so long, but the fact it only took me like 6 months, and yeah, and I feel like I've been staring at these covers and staring at like the books for like so long, and it hasn't been that long compared to like previous projects, how long they've taken me. But back to Spiteful and Determined. So the book kind of starts off with like, we meet the characters, we meet Scott, Beth, Dewey, Grace, and Justin, but also like it just gets right into it, to where like they just got this case, it's bigger, like they're like, oh, this is a pretty big guy, but we can handle him, like, we're the Bounty family, this is what we do, right? And so then it's not till like the 3rd chapter where we actually like go back in time a little bit, and it's takes away from the story a little bit, and it tells you who each character is and why the bounty men are the way they are, and the expectations of this family, and how Scott and Beth, like, how Scott is literally like an exact clone of his dad. And then we get back into the story, and then we start meeting the cross characters, to where I want to say in the next chapter we meet, like, we meet Gabriel, Antonio's dad. We meet we meet Antonio's cousin, Marcos, and so that's kind of like when the story actually starts to cross over. And I want to say it doesn't cross over too much. I mean, obviously it is the same universe and the same storyline, and the characters are crossing, and there are like, I tried to keep the parts where like the same scene like is important in both books. Like, oh, that's another thing, you don't need to read both of them to understand the story. Like, you can easily buy one book and understand the story as a whole. It's like obviously like law enforcement trying to take down criminals and all the nitty-gritty in between. And there are some parts, the most important parts of the story, you will notice they do repeat in like, not exactly, but very similar to each other, they will repeat. And I try to limit that as much as possible, but I also noticed that this side is like strictly like the Bounty family and them trying to take down the Carry On Circle, trying to take down Antonio, where in the Carry On Circle side, it's like there's so many characters to where we can't even really hear their backstory completely, and it's like there's so many characters in the Carry On Circle. Let me just show you. Like, I designed the characters and put pictures, like literally the difference of like how many like characters there are. And yeah, honestly, we go like, I feel like two sides, Spiteful and Determined, the Bounty family is always like one step behind the Carry On Circle, and then towards the very end, I feel like that's when they finally start to catch up. So really, I feel like these two books just fit together so perfectly, and it's like they're both of them are puzzle pieces and they need each other. It like two sides needs both perspectives in order to tell a story. Like, if this was all in one book, like a huge novel, if this was just all in one, I feel like it wouldn't work for some reason. It would feel very limited in a sense. And am I making sense? I think we should move on to Two Sides of the Carry On Circle though. Okay, so Two Sides of the Carry On Circle. I'm going to read to you the little description on the back, and then I'm kind of just gonna do the same thing, go through the story, and point out key details. Every story has two sides. This side is told from the point of view of the criminals. The Carry On Circle were some of the most badass people in Los Campos. Everyone knew them if you were running the streets. Antonio Mendoza was the heart and soul of the Carry On Circle. It started with just him and his best friend Tricky. Soon enough, the entire Mendoza family was involved. The Carry On Circle was essentially the livelihood for a lot of people, but one of the biggest secrets in Los Campos. It became too big for them to keep up, so Antonio set out to find trustworthy people who could potentially help lead this family. Hallie, Zay, Zed, Bryn, and Caden were introduced and changed the game for everybody. With the leadership of Hallie, the street smarts of Zay and Zed, the loyalty of Bryn, and the intelligence of Caden, they became unstoppable. The Carry On Circle had a place for everyone, and it seemed like a forever thing. Until it came crumbling down. You know what they say, the only way from up is down. The people Antonio thought he could trust slowly started to fade away, and it ended up being Blood who betrayed him the most. The fight was on to keep Antonio out of jail, even if that meant the bounty hunters took down everyone else to get to him. So like I said, I feel like the story of Two Sides to Carry On Circle is a lot more complex than Spiteful and Determined, mainly because there are so many characters, like I said, in this book, and each of them, like, when the time comes, I can't explain too much because I don't want to spoil it, but when the time comes, they do get a chance to kind of explain their background and how they got into the Carry On Circle, and I feel like it's a lot of, like, feelings in this book, and same thing with Spiteful and Determined, but at the same time, I feel like with Spiteful and Determined, you kind of have to look for that emotion in a sense, but with this story, you, like, it's there. Like, whether you get, like, emotional at some parts, like sad because it's like a sensitive subject, or if you get really angry at Antonio, because I know I was getting pretty angry at Antonio when I was writing this, that's how you know you got a good villain right there. But yeah, I feel like Spiteful and Determined has a lot of the like action, and like this one has a lot of like suspense in a way. But yeah, it definitely, like, when this book starts off, you start like straight, like the Carry On Circle is there, and in reality Antonio is like the main character. He is the main character throughout this whole series, and I feel like in each book they have their own sets of main characters. Like, obviously, like, if I was to just choose one in this book, like, yes, the Carry On Circle revolves around Antonio, and yes, this whole thing revolves around Antonio, but I feel like if I was to narrow it down, it's pretty obvious that Hallie is the main character in the Carry On Circle, because, I mean, if you read it, you'll see that, like, she is, like, the mom for a lot of people, where, like, she's needed, and if she's not there, this whole thing will fall apart. Where in Spiteful and Determined, like, Scott is the main character in a sense. But yeah, when this story first starts, it jumps right in. You see the, like, day-to-day life of the Carry On Circle. You kind of get a vibe for the characters. You quickly see that Antonio is not really who he says he is, and that he is very quick to put himself first in a selfish way, not in like like I'm protecting my peace way. Like, he will tear anybody down to protect himself in a way. And I mean, for some people, yes, that might be like a normal thing, but for me, that's just like the way Antonio goes about things is not like he's not to be trusted. And I would say very quickly too, we meet Tricky, and then we meet the Mendoza family, and just right as you think the story is over, oh no, it takes a turn and we meet some more family members, and it honestly just, like, I usually, sometimes I'm not very happy with how the books end, because I'm a very firm believer that the books write themselves, the characters write themselves. So I can start out, like, I can make an outline from beginning to end, make page-long character descriptions, and then it turns out by the end of the book that matches nothing I wrote in the beginning. Like, referencing Ice of Hell, I really like the way that story, I kind of had an idea of how I wanted it to end, but the characters and like the middle of the story, I really went in with an open mind, and the story wrote itself. And with this, like, a lot of ideas, like, it was inspired by something, but at the same time, I really feel like when I look back to my inspiration, and then when I look back to Two Sides, it's really like the story completely wrote itself, and the characters completely, like, developed on their own, and I kind of just was there to write it all down. And really, I could not be happier with this series. I think this is so cool. I'm sure somebody has done this in the past. I'm not trying to pull a JoJo Siwa and say that I'm the first person to do this. I'm not. I'm sure there's multiple, like, I know for a fact the author of Percy Jackson, like, he definitely did something like this, and that's kind of what sparked my interest in the first place, to where, like, he released 2 books at the same time, and everyone's like, which one do we read first? And then it ended up, like, you didn't have to, in a sense. And I wanted to create that here, except I wanted to take it even further and create one story with 2 different perspectives, which ended up turning into 2 stories, but in the same universe. Does that make sense? But anyways, I feel like this video is getting pretty long, and I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really hope you do take the time and check these out. They are not very long. I mean, they are the length of a novel, but if you wanted, like individually, they are not very long, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. I feel like these turned out the perfect sizes to where you can actually see the spine and read what's on the spine. And the story, I feel like I already, like, when I was writing this, I definitely do want to make a part 2, not necessarily with the Carry On Circle exactly, but how Spiteful and Determined ends, I feel like it definitely sets it up for a sequel revolving around the Bounty family and Hallie, and maybe some returning characters from the Carry On Circle. But ultimately, like, instead of making a part 2 to this, it would be completely new characters, new stories, and the Bounty family would like, it would like kind of be their next step in the stories basically. And yeah, at the very end it kind of like, it hints to it. But yeah, again, if you want to check these out, I will leave them all in the description. I actually, on my Amazon, I created like a little wish list or whatever of like just all my books in there, so it should make it super simple super simple going forward. Plus, if you click on one book, there's like a like on Amazon, like where it says like the page number and like whatever, like like, and it says like part of a series. I put these two in like part of a series, so like they will always be together, they will never be separated, they will always be tied to one another. So it makes it just super convenient that if you click on one, the other one is just right there waiting to be bought with its sister. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you check out all the links in the description. Please, please, please look into these, and if you decide to pick them up, come back and tell me what you think. I would love to hear about it. If it's confusing, let me know. But at the same time, like, I feel like you have to go in with an open mind and just do, like, if you're invested in one story, finish it. Like, you don't have to switch back and forth if that's not really your style. I honestly, even if you're one of those people who gets like kind of sad when you finish a show or you finish a book because you get super tied to the characters, that might be a good solution. Like, if you read this one first, then you finish it and you're wanting more and you're not over it, there's a whole other book right here with the same characters, the same storyline, and you really just, you're figuring out what happens on the other side. Like, when the door closes, what are the conversations on the other side? And with that being said, that is all I have to say. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, y'all.